This is Dr. Shilpi Tiwari. I am a kidney doctor. I have got two small questions for Dr. Jha and one for Dr. Rajiv.
Mic pass रखते थोड़ा.
Yes. So for Dr. Jha, one thing regarding medical knowledge. How to translate some medical treatises which are there in Sanskrit so that they can be applied in research. For example, in my field, renal transplantation. The other part is
Mic pass.
that is north and south divide of language real, because we have the same letters, Vyanjan what we call. We have the R letter which is used on both the sides of the Vindhyas, and the sound is the same. So these are the two questions for you, sir. And for Professor Rajiv Malhotra ji, I would like to question that shouldn't knowledge be restricted also? Because all this is happening because the restriction of knowledge has been given, it has been, put in at a crossroad.
I'm not sure I understand. Should knowledge be restricted?
Shouldn't knowledge be restricted?
In what sense?
In the sense that it is being misused.
I don't understand. Knowledge
Every society, university and country, it tries to restrict its knowledge.
No, but IT knowledge is not restricted.
Yes, but it is simple knowledge. But then here in
I'm an IT guy. It's not simple. I've worked very hard. What? You did medicine. Okay, medicine knowledge is restricted.
When you talk about nanoparticles in Rasayan Shastra or Viman Shastra, so there are fields which need to be restricted, which were probably followed till 200 years back.
Let me rephrase. Should certain knowledge be such that only those who are qualified, like a pilot only with license can fly a plane, right? And only a nuclear scientist can go on a nuclear facility. This is a very good argument, that there are certain fields where only properly qualified people are allowed, like medicine. Everybody can't just go start doing surgery. So certain knowledge areas require only very specialized people who should have the right to practice in that knowledge area. That I agree.
It's not one of that.
Okay. No, but Sanskrit is not one of that.
Books and fields.
So maybe a particular, surgery would be Sanskrit, knowledge of surgery, or where you have to be qualified to do it. But knowledge of Sanskrit as a language has not been restricted in that sense.
Okay, to answer your first question, translation is a huge problem. Translating from Sanskrit to English, we have some first-hand experience of that. We were translating the science art into English, and there were terms like bhasma. Bhasma. How do you translate bhasma into English? We were considering metal ash or metal dust or something, and each time we would say no, this is not good. So we eventually say okay, bhasma we retain as bhasma, because neither metal dust or metal ash approximate to what exactly bhasma is supposed to be. So these are the problems. Now experimenting these ideas alone in Sanskrit department is not possible. So we have to team up. As I said, Sanskrit is essentially multidisciplinary, because it's not only language; it is more than. It's a whole discipline, including many disciplines. So we can partner with the science departments of JNU or elsewhere. So in this case, we partner with the University of Massachusetts Chemistry Department, and there are two students who are exploring the nanoparticles. Now, bhasma can potentially be used as a bioenhancer. So, for example, you take medicines today, the Western medicines, 250 mg, 500 mg, now 700 mg. Impact is the same, because the size of the medicine increases. So there's a lot of waste, actually, a lot of residues comes out. So if you make metals, which can be used in medicines as per bhasma purification methods and grinding method, you result in better dissolution of this material. And that is what they are exploring. And these two students have gotten very good results. They are about to graduate. I'm sure we have applied for some patents, as well, I'm saying, he has set up his own institute. So we are going to get some very good results. That's one question. The second question.
I think I know a little bit about it, sorry for interrupting. This could be actually a very big breakthrough for Sanskrit traditional knowledge being applied to nanotechnology today with amazing applications. This will be a very big thing, that he actually is a co-discoverer with Balram Singh, both of them working together. It's quite an important project.
Now the second question is very interesting. The Dravid and Indo-Aryan languages, traditionally the linguists have divided us into 4 language families, Indo-Aryan, Dravidian being the majority, constituting 96% of Indian speakers, and then we have Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman, not more than 2% or something. Now the Dravidian family is very interesting, actually. If you compare the Indo-Aryan languages properties and Dravidian properties, there are many overlaps actually. We realize that more when we start building technologies for them. We realize there's a lot of overlap across already. Now, so that makes me wonder. I have recorded that in one of the papers that we came up with Angela Marcantonio in a book called Perspectives on the Origin of Indian Civilization. Genetically, there is no difference. Genetically, no difference. So linguistically also, is there more homogeneous behavior between the two families than really as perceived in the linguistics domain? So my hunch is that maybe there was some Indic family, a Proto-Indic family, which split right across into the north and the south because of the Vindhyas geographically dividing us. So maybe the Indic family split into two families, and then the North Indian Indic gave rise to the North Indian Aryan languages, and South Indian Indic gave rise to the four Dravidian languages. So to me, that is the possible theory, instead of having the Proto-Indo-European coming to India and all that nonsense. Now, if you study one of the works by Amino, an eminent American linguist who studied 25 years in South India, worked on all Dravidian languages, he has to note in one of his very premier articles, India as a linguistic area, he says that despite being so many language families perceptibly, India behaves like a common linguistic area. So even if you go by Amino's remark and in his very famous paper, it looks like India has been behaving because of this so much of mixing, so much of traveling across and so much of acculturation, looks like a single common family. And that should probably modern India should promote than the divisive nature of things, which is more political than anything real, actually.
One more question, final question. You want to say something?
Yes, of course.
Get a mic.
Here, I don't want to go into my disagreements with Professor Jha. However, the commonalities between all the Indian languages, also the Munda languages, is very largely due precisely to the influence of Sanskrit upon the vernaculars. And in this respect, I would like to say something to an earlier question. You see, many parents fear that their children are wasting their time by learning Sanskrit. Now, even if Sanskrit does not become the Rashtra Bhasha or something, as 49% of the Constituent Assembly wanted, still it is useful to learn Sanskrit. In Australia, they are reintroducing Latin, which is more or less the same thing in European languages as Sanskrit is for Indian languages. Now, you see, earlier it was phased out because it was deemed useless. Now, they did a test. You see, one group of pupils was given English for 8 hours. Another group was given 4 hours of English, 4 hours of Latin. Now, that second group, at the end of the course, did not only know Latin while the others did not, they also knew English better. And so, similarly, learning Sanskrit is simply very useful for your Hindi or whichever language.
Good. Yeah, my view is that we should Sanskritize English. We should take non-translatables. We should take Sanskrit non-translatables. In my book, Being Different, I've got the whole chapter called Sanskrit non-translatables. These are words which have no dharma, and I explain why Atman cannot be translated as soul. I have a whole lot of these. Actually, there's 1,000 of them. But I would like to write a little book on 108 Sanskrit non-translatables and make it a policy or recommend a policy that everyone, even the normal language is English, these 108 words they should not translate and they should use the Sanskrit, and then you Sanskritize English. Then after you've done 108, then you do 208. You just keep adding more Sanskrit words into English, and you don't have to teach people Sanskrit. You just tell them you can speak English, but these 108 words you must learn what they mean, why the English equivalent is not good enough. It is not the same thing, and that Sanskritizes English.